Back again with a fresh episode. Super excited to share about our most recent trip to Argentina. So, we went to Argentina just to paint a picture for some remote work. We set this up in contrast with our plans to go to Colombia, but long story short, we ended up in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is a great city, and I'm going to tell you why you should see Buenos Aires. We have the stay, we had the things we got to eat, and we had tons of experiences. Again, see it. You know what I'm saying? If you know, you know. So we found our stay on booking.com. It was modern apartments in Puerto Madero, and it was an ideal way to get settled into Buenos Aires. This stay was a 9 out of 10 on that scale, and I'm kind of confused why it wasn't a 10 out of 10. Overall, the perfect touchstone for this time is definitely the photos and videos. I'll drop some of those here and here, and you can tour those on YouTube and Instagram when you get a chance. The reality, though, is that the stay had so many things that we needed on the remote work side, as well as just a general great stay. So from the start, our stay was ideal. They had a shuttle service we were able to book before we even took off from the States, which made it super easy for us to know that since we weren't traveling light, we'd be able to get all of our luggage and everything we needed to start working immediately into our spot. So we got a few hours of work in right away. We also got to tour around our neighborhood and kind of see what things were nearby. Puerto Madero, just a quick spoiler, is a beautiful neighborhood, very similar to any newly updated neighborhood. This used to be an old kind of part of the town of Buenos Aires, or the city, and it had been updated in the 90s, right? So in the last 30 years, most of the buildings you see are new developments or recently built. There are parts of this kind of island feel because there are bridges that kind of connect it to the mainland of the city. And then on the far side, you have Rio de Plata, right? So Puerto Madero, again, has tons to offer. Everything from being outside in the Reserva, is like huge preserve that you can kind of tour through for free, as well as some different things that happen on this kind of island that's just off the coaster, just kind of slightly separated from the main part of Buenos Aires. So now that you got that 1,000-foot view of our neighborhood, again, full of bars, restaurants, beautiful space, every service you could want or need, including grocery, less than, a quarter mile away, we can zoom in on the space. So the space beyond the shuttle, once we got inside, we were really impressed with what they had to offer at Modern Apartments from Puerto Madero. Again, shout out to them on booking. And if you go to Buenos Aires, I don't think you'll find anything better for the value, especially if you're going for an extended stay. This place pretty much straddled every experience we've had in renting a space. It had the vibe of a resort feel because it was in this very pristine area. It also had the vibe of a private residence being rented on, say, like an Airbnb or a Vrbo kind of thing, right? So it was an incredible cross-section of all of those. And then on top of that, the level of attention and concierge services provided, as well as cleaning services, made it feel like a hotel. So it really was the perfect cross-section, great value, awesome staff, bilingual staff, but it was cool to be able to tap in and connect with them both for the business side of things, as well as just personally to learn about Argentina and Buenos Aires. One quick thing to add is that we didn't even get to take full advantage. We went in winter. The reality is that the pool was closed while we were there, just because most locals wouldn't have used it. The temperatures were good for me to get in the pool, but the services weren't being offered because by and large, the people who live in these apartments weren't going to access or use that. So the only services that were fully open and available that were in the complex of like 4 or 5 buildings was the weightlifting and gym services. But if you went at a different time in the year, probably even in their fall, you'd be able to access the pool as well. And there are a couple pools within the courtyard, really swanky looking space, beautiful spot to maybe take your dinner, in addition to some of the other amenities that are baked into every single apartment. When I think about this place, it had immense amount of privacy, it had a great price, and it was a lot of space, right? But we were there to work remotely. So when I think remote work, there were a few things that this space did really well that allowed us to not only enjoy our time in Buenos Aires, but also for me to enjoy my first real experience working remotely. With that in mind, I've developed a quick little list of 5 things that are on my remote work needs list. Number 1 on the list, obviously everybody's thinking it, Wi-Fi, right? Internet. Now, I'm going to unpack this a little bit with 2 different things. One, you need high speed, but secondarily, you need hotspot, right? So high speed is key. They had incredible fiber there. I loved it. It was 90% of the time perfect. But the other half of that is hotspot. You might get into a situation where the Wi-Fi goes down or they have to reset something in the building. If you're somewhere further out or more remote, I don't know about Argentina, but I know in other parts of the world, there's kind of intermittent power at times, right? So having a hotspot could be a real win for you to make sure you don't disrupt your workflow. Either way, again, the internet was ideal and awesome. It allowed us to have Wi-Fi in our space. Obviously, most of the restaurants and everything around has Wi-Fi as well, but being able to have that with all devices on there, no problem, was incredible, right? Their Wi-Fi was as good, if not better, than some of the apartments I've had here in the States, and it showed with everything we had on the multiple TVs, all of our tablets, phones, and each of our laptops connected to the Wi-Fi at all times. We were able to stream while also working on multiple devices, as well as having some music playing in the background off of some home smart speakers. So really great Wi-Fi. And again, that hotspot, just to plug those hotspots, I'll link the ones that we brought along with us. We have one that was more a corporate hotspot, as well as a personal one that taps into 5G. But yeah, the Sky Roam is something that we've used throughout our time in Europe. And I would really put a plug in for that global hotspot. It's really great, especially in big cities, because it does tap into the internet signals that are emitted for cellular, right? So it's super awesome to be able to both have that security at home, but then also to know if something goes down there or if you want to get on the move, you have everything you need in your pocket. The next thing our space had to offer is number 2. Number 2 is ample space. So besides having Wi-Fi, you need a workspace as well. So the workspaces included our balcony, which was just a super win. I think we're a little obsessed with balconies after being in Europe. I think it was incredible to be able to work on the balcony that we had when we were living in Switzerland for the weekend, bringing in the new year, as well as just being able to kind of separate, right? If you're working remotely, you might have to have a call. You might have routine meetings that you want to take, or just need space to work. I'm a kind of a louder, bigger personality from time to time. I like music blaring, not just in my headphones. So sometimes I need a separate room. So we had a separate room upstairs. It was kind of a duplex apartment. You'll see that in the videos, as well as we had a kitchen island we could work from and a massive table that we could both eat at and work at, no problem, without moving our workstation. So I would suggest, when you're doing your search for remote work, make sure you find a spot with ample space, both space as far as to lay your items, right? Surface space, but also areas to separate and expand if you're working and living with someone else, right? Being with my partner, I think it was super helpful to be able to have multiple spaces for me to step out here and read versus be in the kitchen and kind of working on the island while getting lunch set up as well. So the space is necessary, just as necessary as really strong Wi-Fi. Number 3 is just really simple. I would say power converters are an essential, right? You also want to make sure that you maybe even have some backup tasks. One of the best practices we gave was making sure that when we were leaving the States, right? Peacing out from Chicago, we had some tasks that were already downloaded on our laptops. Now, most of us work on some cloud-based system, whether it's OneDrive or Google Drives, right? But the reality is that you might be in a scenario where you're working offline at times, right? Whether that's we want to work from the park or we're working somewhere that doesn't have really strong Wi-Fi outside of our location. So I would say power converters that you can have with you and take on the go. Luckily, again, big plug for modern apartments in Puerto Madero. They had power converters built into the wall, right? So they had a whole set of outlets that were built into all of the outlets available in the apartment, with various outlets and power converters throughout the world. So again, this place was A1. I don't know how they're not a 10 out of 10 They'll always be a 10 out of 10 in my book. And again, both for the character that the space had, how cordial their staff was, but then also how applicable the things that they had done for us were to our experience, right? They had really taken some care to make sure we didn't have any questions. No había cosas pendientes, right? There weren't things kind of that needed to happen to make this ready. They had already anticipated everything we'd need, and they took good care of us. So again, power converters is something that you'll want to bring in or ask about before you book a stay, as well as backing up some work, right? Having some tasks that you can do offline or just on your device, or maybe the old-fashioned way on paper. Number 4 is just as easy and quick, a spot with local breaks, right? So taking a break is necessary. I think when thinking about working remotely, it's super essential to set yourself up for success, to not feel pigeonholed into work while you want to be out there. One of the ways we did that is that we worked away. I'll get to that in a second. But when we chose our stay, we really wanted to focus on this idea that we would be able to take breaks at a spot that is not where we live, right? We don't want to just take breaks on the balcony. We wanted to be able to go outside, go downstairs, and know we had some options nearby, whether that be tourist sites or restaurants, right? So we found a way to, again, find a beautiful space where we could know that as we step forward into our stay, we would have a spot where we could take breaks, even if you're not able to have great breaks nearby your stay. You might be able to find a spot that's a co-working space. So that's number 5, is finding a spot to work away. Co-working spaces can be awesome, but so can coffee shops. So look for things that maybe are nearby what you want to do for the rest of that day, right? The beauty of remote work, at least in our opinion, was the fact that once we clock out, we can clock into these attractions, right? So when we were considering this stay, we were super excited to realize that Selena had a branch here, Selena Palermo Soho, and that allowed us to work from there, enjoy some drinks after work, and then head off into the neighborhood. And if you know anything about Buenos Aires, Palermo Soho is a beautiful neighborhood both day and night. It has tons of things from a nearby food hall, tons of shopping, and a few even local sites that you can access. But beyond that, the nightlife is crazy, right? So it's an awesome spot to get plugged into. A lot of these are well positioned in the city, so they're good hubs and launching off points when you're thinking about good attractions. They have done a lot of the market research that you might want to do to get yourself ready for your trip. So tapping into them as a resource and actually using the space, even if you're not going to use it as your mainstay, could be a great way to have a space to work away. It broke up our rhythm. It let us know that our timeline wouldn't be fixed to our location, and it allowed us even to tap in when we were doing some nightlife options. We used that as kind of our hub for Ubering to and from. We knew where it was, we knew what it was near to, and we knew it was safe. So check out Selena, check out a few of the other competitors that they have as well, because they're scattered throughout the map, and it's a growing way to do a hostel, right? It's basically a highbrow hostel with a lot of great services. So give it a look. I'll link it in the show notes, but make sure, again, you go through those top 5. You need high-speed internet and potentially a hotspot. You need ample space. You also want to make sure that you have power converters and backup tasks. You don't want to get caught dead in the water, not able to get your tasks done or tap in to your workflow. But lastly, make sure you take breaks. Use your time and your stay to get close to what you want to do. And also think about secondary workspaces. Co-working spaces are there for remote workers and nomads. And I think that it's just the beginning. The last and greatest honorable mention of our stay is the fact that it had free, I'll say it again, free breakfast, right? So the breakfast at our spot was free, and we assumed that when we read it, there would be options that they would either bring to us or some kind of continental setup, because that's how it was listed. Well, they were underselling it. I'll put it like that, because what we had at our disposal was every day a continental-esque breakfast that was down at a restaurant. So we were able to go down to a restaurant. The restaurant was called Brote, and that restaurant provided us with a handful of options we could choose from, incredible service, as well as a lot of support and getting around the city. Again, we use that as a launching off point. We even use that as a workspace on our last day, and I used that as a workspace as I was kind of doing different aspects of research and reading as I started my new role. They were super cordial and able to offer us so much that at the end of our time, we offered the team a handful of gifts just to show our appreciation. So Brote is a great restaurant in Puerto Madero. If you're ever there, stop in for breakfast, stop in for brunch. They're open even later. Their menu is incredible. Their chefs know what they're doing in there, and the food tastes really clean, right? It wasn't necessarily one way or another, meaning it wasn't like a vegan restaurant or any kind of dietary restriction focus, but it definitely provided very clear services and incredible food at a fraction of what it would cost here in the States. And again, people were making fresh scones and different types of drinks that kind of kept us on our toes as far as coffee. I'm new to the coffee scene, but yeah, there they were, doing these kind of little cappuccino situations in the back, as well as adding their own blend of spices to the mix. And yeah, we couldn't have been happier with the time we shared with Brote, and that's all thanks to our stay, right? Thank you so much, Modern Apartments Puerto Madero, because everything you did for us made sure that our stay was good, and it made sure that at the end of the night, we were in a spot that was quality, that didn't cost too much, and that was safe, as we toured and loved every bit of our time in Buenos Aires. So embedded in our stay, one of the things that I want to definitely mention is that we were in a part of town, Puerto Madero, that was right along what appears to kind of be a river, right? They have these big gruas, these kind of like things that they used to use throughout history to bring in things that were coming into the port. They would pick them up off this river dike area to launch them into the different storehouses and places for them to be sold. It was connected to the railway system, which is nearby, and it's just a beautiful part of town. It's just rich, ancient history, not necessarily ancient, but something that feels like a touchstone to another time. And the story I really want to share is pretty short. The reality of our stay, though, is that we were near this every day. From day one, we saw these situations kind of unfolding after sitting in our tour, where we could see these things that resembled the past. And while they were just kind of shells of what they used to be, I loved that I was able to integrate being in that area into my daily routine. And when I say daily routine, what I mean is I would get up and consistently do what I had been doing in the States. Before leaving, I was bike commuting daily into work, leaving at about 5:30, getting into work, doing some quick yoga, and then pressing in to the rest of my day, supporting teachers and kind of working in education. The beauty of this stay and the beauty of remote work is that I was able to not only keep that routine, but to have that routine live in this beautiful historic part of town. I think that for me, that will always stand out as a consistent memory. This idea that I could pop up, go downstairs, connect with the doorman real fast, be one of the first people he sees every day, and then get outside right on this river, do a quick warm up, get some pull-ups, get my yoga in for the day, go for a quick walk or run, and then just relax, right? This idea of being able to feel integrated into a space, I don't think would happen in the same way had I only been there for a weekend. And I appreciate so much and cherish even now as we're back in Chicago, the idea that I made Buenos Aires a part of my routine, that it wasn't something I just went to the gym and did those same actions and activities and then went back upstairs. It's that I was even then drinking from the richness that is that city and that is its history on the daily. Being able to do that in the morning, first thing, taking a moment for me and taking a moment with this city helped me know it better and allowed me to really tap into what a daily morning routine could look like for myself. And it made me really reflect on how that could be different moving back here to Chicago, a city that I know well, a city with also a rich history, a city with a timeline that I can tap into regularly. So I don't know what other remote workers do. I don't know what other people feel about their morning routine, but for me, I cherish it. I cherish being out there under the gruas, going for my run along this area that's been reframed, refurbished, and feeling like I have a connection both to that space, the history, the people, and my routine.